right. Well, good day, my fellow well dwellers. Welcome to I Am a Well Dweller. If you're new here, my name is Eric Freiberger, and I'm coming to you from sunny Calgary, Alberta, Treaty 7 lands. And I talk about all things relating to disability, dignity, and hope. So, welcome. All right. So it's been about a week last Sunday when the closing ceremonies of the 2024 Paris Paralympics took place. And, I really got into the Paralympic spirit this year. More than I have in any other previous Olympics. And I think it's probably due to discovering the CBC streaming app, GEM, where I was able to catch full events live as well as previously recorded and in specific sporting activities. So it was really cool to see the athletes play the full extent of their games and their activities, their accomplishments. Just awesome, awesome. So, post Paralympics, I came across this brilliant article on the blog site Disability Belongs by Nora Onanian. And she wrote about lessons to learn from the Paralympics. So I thought I have to share this with you guys. And so I'll read it to you in full. And then afterwards, I might, just kind of touch on some of the things that I may have learned from what she shared. And we'll go from there. So, all right, let's dive into her article, Lessons to Learn from the Paralympics by Nora Onanian. This past spring, like a game of telephone, my exciting news that I would be able to attend the 2024 Paris Paralympics spread and was, well, misconstrued. On more than one occasion, I got a text from a friend of my grandma's or a peer at school where the person wished me well in my big swimming competition. Either my 90-pound scrawny physique gives off that of an Olympic athlete, or many people are unfamiliar with how big of a deal it is to qualify for the Paralympics. The athletic competition is on a global stage with not some of, but the most talented athletes of our time. While my once a week swim practice through Adaptive Sports New England is something I enjoy and take moderately seriously, it is certainly not enough training for an athletic career of Paralympic heights. What those Sunday mornings spent in the pool did do for me, however, was provide an interesting perspective on how the public engages with para-athletes and disability more broadly. The first swimming competition I entered as an amputee was last March, organized through Move United, an affiliate of the Paralympic Games. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I didn't think I'd been in the same room with as many fellow disability community folk, let alone being treated so normally. In my opinion, there is no such thing as normal, despite my body moving differently than people are used to. Seriously, not a single person batted an eye at my scars, limb difference, or anything else I would normally mentally prepare myself for when getting on the diving board at my high school swim meets, or entering any room full of able-bodied people. At this meet, sure, a couple of my competitors were a decade younger than me. Belated apologies to the 12-year-olds whose butts I whooped. There are, in fact, not an abundance of amputees in their 20s who swim competitively in my area. But our disabilities were similar, creating close to a level playing field. This gets to the heart of what competition is all about. And for an adaptive competition more specifically, it was important that I, or the meet as a whole, didn't feel like a spectacle. This was, unfortunately, not the case at the next meet I competed in. When I got the itinerary of events, I learned I was one of 3 athletes with vastly differing disabilities competing in the adaptive portion of the competition. After several heats of non disabled athletes who were competing to break records, they had to qualify to be there. A para event would be sprinkled in like some sort of sideshow. Cue the participation medals and pity claps. It's an unfortunate truth that most non disabled people eat up inspiration porn. See the late Stella Young's brilliant TEDx speech for a more robust definition of this term. And I will leave this in the show notes for you to find as well. Scenarios like this, where we are treated very differently from non disabled peers for doing essentially the same thing. My best guess is that the awe comes from a place of believing we've overcome our disabilities to do something incredible, when really it should be awe at our sheer athletic talent with, not in spite of, our disability. This is where the Paralympics teeters a tricky balance. At times, across these games, social media has been a breeding ground for misconceptions. On a video of Chinese para athlete Gao Jinxing's record breaking men's S5 50-meter butterfly swim, I saw a comment along the lines of, "You're telling me that this many people have no arms and just so happen to swim?" This diminishes the reality that Paralympic athletes train just as hard as Olympic athletes, and that there are meets like the one I attended where there is close to equal competition fighting to reach the same goals. My favorite component of this year's Paralympics coverage, however, was actually aided by social media and news outlets during these games. The public has learned more about the athletes as people. Paralympic swimmers Mallory Wegman, Christy Raleigh, Crossley, and Jessica Long, to name a few, are showing that they can be athletes and moms. And while this shouldn't be revolutionary, athletes, moms, and disabled. Some are college students, like local para rower Sage Harper, a student at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield. If you listen to sports commentators, the sticking point when speaking before, during, or after a race is not their disability. Rather, they are talked about like any other professional athlete, with stats, strengths, and technical notes at the forefront, a concept that can easily get lost sometimes, such as when non disabled people speak to a caretaker figure instead of talking directly to the disabled person, or when people tell me I'm inspirational just for existing with a disability. Is that para athletes are multifaceted, interesting, and inspirational for things like their adaptability and dedication, not their bravery for going out there. Yes, that's a line I've heard firsthand. Disabled people shouldn't have to be exceptions to what the average person expects of them, or super crips to be worthy of your respect. With the closing ceremonies already wrapped, I can't help but hope these lessons are carried beyond the games. The Paralympic swimming event I attended gave me hope for this type of future. Sitting one row behind the 3 young kids of Team USA, swimmer Christy Raleigh Crossley, when their mom broke the women's S9 50-meter freestyle world record, was easily the highlight of my Paralympic experience. There's something that really warms my heart when thinking of the view they will forever hold of their mom. Strong, dedicated, disabled, yes, that's still part of the list. Fast, well spoken. The list goes on. I think it's about time the world catches up to them. Nora's brilliant. I really think she touched on some really key lessons that are significant and important. Um, not just for Paralympic athletes, but for all of us, for anyone in this world who faces the reality of relationships and community amidst those with disabilities, both recognizable and invisible. So, what are the lessons I'm learning from Nora's writing? Number one, awe at sheer athletic talent. We need to recognize that para sports are different sports, not adaptive sports. And this is significant. And I've learned this over the years of myself being in a wheelchair and taking part in wheelchair rugby activities and training in martial arts. Being in a wheelchair and doing athletic sports, it's a completely different sport. You have to know and learn the way to maneuver your wheelchair and work around with it. The rules are different. The elements you play with are different. It's not an adaptive sport. It is a completely different sport. And I'm willing to bet, and I would put money on this, that if any upright person were to sit down in a wheelchair and try and compete, let's take even LeBron James, of all people, to sit down in a wheelchair and play Paralympic basketball, I'm willing to bet he's not going to be near as good as some of those other athletes that were playing in the Paralympics this past few weeks. We need to be, as Nora puts it, in awe at our sheer athletic talent with, not in spite of, our disability. Okay, the second lesson I was learning from her writing: see those with recognizable disabilities as people. And I think this comes in two different formats. First, we recognize them for their particular strengths and their personal accomplishments. She says they are talked about like any other professional athlete, with stats, strengths, and technical notes at the forefront. So when we see people with disabilities, don't just see them for their disability, but see the strengths and abilities that they have as people, and the significant role they play in community, and the great ways they contribute and can build into our society. Okay, and then the second level, I think, is more just for the multiple layers of personality and character and identity that come out in seeing a person with disabilities as a person. She uses this example: Paralympic swimmers Mallory Wagman, Christy Raleigh, Crossley, and Jessica Long, to name a few, are showing that they can be athletes and moms. And while this shouldn't be revolutionary, athletes, moms, and disabled. Some are college students, like local Paris rower Sage Harper, a student at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield. People are multi-layered, and they have different roles that they play in their neighborhood and in their community. And when you recognize and see people with disabilities as a person, you need to acknowledge that everything they do and the communities they're a part of, and the activities they're a part of, are not just always related to disabled groups and disabled organizations. They there's an importance to integrating and being not just affiliational, but having community be diverse and have people of all levels of ability in it. So I guess that connects to my third lesson that I was learning. Creating diversity in abilities makes you stronger. Now, this might be counterintuitive to what maybe Nora was identifying with, but I think there's a certain degree of strength in training in your abilities in your athletic sports with multiple people of different abilities. I trained in martial arts for 14 years, and I was the only one who was in a wheelchair that would train with normal ambulatory upright martial artists. And what I very quickly learned while training was that my wheelchair was not a disadvantage. In fact, it was an significant advantage. The people that were training martial arts with me had to learn a whole new way of maneuvering around me, of ways to attack and defend against someone in a wheelchair. And I had a significant advantage in the reverse of knowing how to attack an ambulatory person, an upright person, and that the wheelchair is perhaps a little stronger than bone. But in any case, yeah, creating diversity in abilities within sports, within life, makes us stronger, not weaker. So, a little side note, a little last thought. I have been asked to host in a week's time the scriptural reasoning interfaith gathering, where I will put forward first 2 passages of Christian scripture that relates to the theme of courageously connecting with disability, and so I chose 2 scriptures. The first, I am trying to focus on who do we courageously connect with that has disabilities and how. And I chose 2 Samuel 9, 1 through 13, and that's the story of Mephibosheth. So I encourage you, if you have not heard this story, you should Google it, look it up. You will find it. It's a fascinating story in the Old Testament. But what I really wanted to touch on, as it connects with some of the lessons learned from Paralympics, is my second focus of how do we courageously connect with our own disabilities. And I think it's something that is often overlooked within the larger community at large. And I chose 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 10, which is where Paul talks about his thorn in the flesh, if you have not heard of this. Particularly, I focus on the words where God answers Paul. Christ says to him, "My grace is sufficient to you, for power is made perfect in weakness. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong." And I think that that ties into a lot of the lessons we can learn from the Paralympics. That recognizing that it's not just the visible disabilities that build strength in our community and involving them in being inclusive, but it's also recognizing that we are all touched by disability. We all have something to learn about what it means to be finite creatures, and to recognize that we all have certain disabilities in our life. This is a something that we may grow into. This is something that we may currently be experiencing. But yes, in the midst of connecting with the disabilities within, and connecting with the disabilities of those around us, we can begin to learn that whenever we are weak, then we are also strong. So I guess those are my thoughts from I Am a Well Dweller at the bottom of the well today. And I hope this might have reached you well, and that it has intrigued your imagination. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And please drop me a comment. Let me know what you think as well. If there's any lessons that I have not mentioned that you are learning, and give me a thumbs up, a like, and please share this with your friends and those that you think will get a lot from the bottom of the well. Until next time, I hope you have a great week, and I will catch you next time at the bottom of the well.